The Galactic Union's High Command Chamber was a model of cold efficiency. Holographic projections of fleet movements filled the space, while the constant hum of machinery underscored the discussions of the Union's leaders. Representatives from numerous species sat around a circular table, each dressed in the traditional attire of their respective cultures. At the head of the table stood Supreme Commander Athel Kor, an imposing figure with shimmering iridescent scales, their glow amplified by the artificial lighting. The meeting was convened to determine resource allocations and strategies for the upcoming battle with the Zarxa, a fierce, technologically superior species known for their ruthless conquests. As the meeting progressed, the topic of humanity was brought up, causing a ripple of amused chuckles and knowing glances among the council members. Humanity's addition to the Galactic Union had been recent and largely viewed as a symbolic act aimed at promoting inclusivity rather than recognizing any substantial contributions. While humans had shown resourcefulness, their technology lagged behind the advanced civilizations present. Their fleet was small and their tactics rudimentary. Their history was marred by internal conflict, and they were viewed as enthusiastic but ineffective participants in the coming war. Councillor Vra of the Sarek Coalition spoke up, her sleek, fur-covered form leaning forward, her golden eyes sparkling with a mischievous glint. "Let's offer the Omega launcher to our human allies," she suggested, her voice dripping with mock diplomacy. "A token of goodwill to show our dedication to their involvement in this noble struggle." A brief silence followed before the chamber erupted into laughter. The Omega launcher was an old, failed weapon, a relic of past Union experiments. Designed to harness subspace energy for massive destructive power, it had proven too unreliable, prone to overheating, misfiring, or even exploding on its own. After multiple disastrous tests, it had been decommissioned and relegated to a cautionary example in engineering circles. "It's not just faulty, it's dangerous," scoffed Counselor or Al, a crystalline entity whose body reflected the light in dazzling colors. "A malfunctioning weapon in human hands? They'll destroy themselves before the Zarxa even arrive." Despite the ridicule, Vra's idea gained momentum. The humans, eager to prove themselves, would never suspect the gift to be anything but a gesture of support. They would likely accept the weapon with gratitude, putting themselves at risk and unwittingly removing a potential problem for the Union. Supreme Commander Ayler raised his clawed hand, silencing the murmurs. "It is settled," he said, his voice deep and commanding. "The Omega launchers will be delivered to the human fleet at once. Inform their representatives that this is a sign of our unwavering solidarity." On Earth, the announcement was met with a mix of surprise and cautious optimism, the humans unaware of the true nature of the gift they had been offered. The human delegation had long sensed the subtle condescension from their allies, but this latest gesture seemed sincere. Captain Elena Monroe, commander of the HSS Resolute and a key leader in humanity's military, was the first to receive the news. Standing on the bridge of her ship, Elena examined the specifications of the Omega launcher, her gaze sharpening as she sifted through the data. On the surface, the weapon appeared formidable, a subspace energy cannon capable of obliterating entire fleets with a single shot. But buried in the technical notes were red flags: unstable, frequent recalibration required, and not suitable for extended use. The accompanying message was full of diplomatic niceties. "The Galactic Union acknowledges the courage and resourcefulness of the human race. As a symbol of our shared dedication to peace and progress, we present your fleet with the advanced Omega launcher system." Elena couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. "This has to be some kind of prank," she muttered, her voice low, drawing a questioning look from Lieutenant Marcus Yates, her tactical officer. "Even if it is," Marcus replied, leaning nonchalantly against a console, "we've never shied away from a challenge. If they doubt us, let's prove them wrong." Elena allowed a small smile. "You're right. Let's find out what this thing's really made of." The Omega launchers were distributed across the human fleet, and teams of engineers and scientists set to work immediately. The first tests were a disaster. The power core overheated within minutes, and one technician narrowly avoided a fatal explosion. But where other species might have abandoned the project, humanity saw an opportunity. Known for their ability to innovate under pressure, the humans attacked the problem head-on. Across Earth's orbital stations, engineers meticulously examined every aspect of the weapon, dissecting its circuitry and components. They realized that the Omega launcher's issues were not inherent flaws, but rather the result of incomplete design and poor calibration. It was as if the weapon had been discarded before its true potential had been fully explored. Dr. Aisha Patel, a brilliant physicist specializing in energy manipulation, proposed an unconventional solution. She suggested using Earth's unique energy crystals, naturally occurring formations deep within the planet's crust, to stabilize the subspace fluctuations of the weapon. It was a bold bold and risky idea, but it was the kind of innovative thinking that had become a hallmark of humanity's approach. "We're not just fixing it," Dr. Patel stated during a briefing. "We're completely reimagining it." After weeks of tireless work, the modified Omega launcher was finally ready for a live demonstration. The test took place on the outer reaches of the Sol system, with the HSS Resolute as the main platform. Captain Elena Monroe stood at the helm, her crew filled with nervous excitement. "Fire the weapon," Elena instructed, her tone calm and commanding. The Omega launcher came to life, its power core emitting a fierce blue glow. For a moment, the ship's systems flickered as the weapon drained enormous amounts of energy. Then, with a deafening roar, it released a concentrated beam of subspace energy, slamming into its target, a decaying asteroid the size of a small moon. The asteroid disintegrated in an explosion of debris, the shockwave rippling across the void. Cheers erupted on the bridge, but Elena remained unfazed, her thoughts already turning to the future. This was no mere weapon. This was humanity's moment to rewrite its story, to prove that they were more than the underdogs of the Galactic Union. Word of humanity's success spread slowly at first. Engineers within the Union, observing from a distance, were astounded by the reports. The humans hadn't just activated the Omega launchers, they had enhanced their performance. Some dismissed it as propaganda, while others began to feel uneasy. Back on Earth, Captain Monroe and her crew prepared for the next stage, deploying the modified Omega launchers in actual combat. What had been dismissed as a mere joke by the Galactic Union was now becoming a serious game-changer. Humanity, long underestimated, was poised to challenge the established order of galactic warfare. The HSS Resolute, though not the largest or most advanced ship, had become the symbol of human resilience, carrying the first fully operational Omega launcher. Once a source of mockery, the weapon now stood as proof of humanity's innovation. Captain Monroe stood on the bridge once more, watching as her engineers made final preparations for the weapon's live combat debut. The Galactic Union had requested reinforcements for a critical battle on the edge of the Anran sector, where the Zarxa invaders had launched a brutal assault. The human fleet had been assigned to a secondary role, quietly acknowledged as inferior by their allies. They were to stay behind the primary Union forces, providing minimal assistance while the more powerful species handled the heaviest fighting. But Elena had other plans. The Anran sector was a war zone. The Zarxa fleet, their dark ships bristling with weapons, tore through the Union's defenses without effort. Explosions lit the darkness as smaller Union vessels were annihilated, their remains drifting into the void. The HSS Resolute and its fleet arrived on the outskirts of the battlefield, their modest ships dwarfed by the massive cruisers of their allies. The comms channel crackled with orders from the Union's flagship, the Eternal Radiance. "Human fleet, hold your position and await further orders." Supreme Commander Athel Kor's voice came through, impatient and clipped. "Do not engage unless given direct orders." Elena's fists tightened in frustration. She understood the Union's doubt in humanity's ability to make a real difference, but she also knew they had a weapon capable of turning the tide. She turned to her tactical officer, Marcus Yates, and gave her first command. "Activate the Omega launcher. Aim for the largest Zarxa vessel." Marcus hesitated, looking at her in disbelief. "Captain, we haven't been cleared to engage." "They don't need to give us permission," Elena replied, her voice steady and resolute. "We didn't come here to sit on the sidelines." The charging sequence for the weapon began, and the ship's systems flickered as the launcher drew immense energy. On the view screen, the colossal Zarxa dreadnought appeared, its devastating firepower hammering the Union fleet. "Target locked," Marcus reported. "Fire," Elena ordered. The Omega launcher roared to life, unleashing a searing beam of energy. It collided with the dreadnought, tearing through its shields like paper. The space around it went silent for a brief moment before the ship exploded in a brilliant flash, its shattered remains flying in every direction. The Union fleet stood in stunned silence, taken aback by the unexpected destruction. Moments later, the Eternal Radiance hailed the HSS Resolute. "Captain Monroe, what did you just do?" Supreme Commander Athel Kor demanded, his holographic image flickering with fury. "We did what was needed," Elena answered calmly. "You're welcome." Before Kor could respond, the Zarxa fleet began regrouping. Their once confident assault was now more cautious, their formation disrupted by the sudden loss of their dreadnought. Elena recognized the shift and acted quickly. "Send coordinates to the rest of the fleet," she commanded. "We're moving in." As the human ships advanced, their modified Omega launchers opened fire, each shot hitting its mark with deadly accuracy. Zarxa ships were torn apart in seconds, and the Union forces, inspired by the human success, began to push back. For the first time, the Zarxa were forced to retreat. Reluctantly, Supreme Commander Athel Kor acknowledged the human fleet's contribution. "Redirect Union Union forces to support the human advance, he ordered, his tone thick with reluctance. Back aboard the HSS Resolute, the crew fought to maintain the Omega launcher's power. The immense energy demands were pushing the ship's systems to their limits, and each shot required exacting precision to avoid overheating. Dr. Aisha Patel, monitoring from engineering, directed her team with rapid-fire commands. Elena, we need more time between shots, Aisha warned over the comms. The core's temperature is rising dangerously. We're close to a meltdown. Elena nodded, determination etched in her expression. Do what you can. Every shot counts. The Zarksa, realizing the threat posed by the human fleet, escalated their attacks. The HSS Resolute rocked under heavy fire, alarms blaring across the bridge. Shields are down to 30%. One more hit like that and we're done, Marcus reported, his face drained of color. Redirect power from non-critical systems, Elena commanded. Keep the Omega launcher operational, no matter what. The battle was turning, but the Zarksa were far from defeated. Their flagship, an enormous warship bristling with weapons, took the lead in their formation. Its guns unleashed a devastating barrage, ripping through the Union's defenses and leaving chaos in its wake. Elena knew that the Omega launcher was humanity's best shot at taking down the flagship, but it would take precise coordination. She opened a comm channel to the Union fleet. This is Captain Monroe of the HSS Resolute. We're targeting the Zarksa flagship, but we need support. If we're going to win this, now's the time to work together. The response came quickly. Ships from across the Union mobilized, forming a protective shield around the HSS Resolute. For the first time, the Union forces fought as a united front, inspired by the boldness of humanity's approach. As the Omega launcher charged, the flagship zeroed in on the Resolute, its weapons locking onto the ship. The hull shuddered under the onslaught, the shields straining to hold. We're almost there. Aisha's voice crackled through the comms. Just a few more seconds. Captain, we won't make it, Marcus shouted as another explosion rocked the ship. Elena braced herself against the console, her grip tightening. We don't need to, she said quietly. With a burst of energy, the Omega launcher fired. The beam struck the Zarksa flagship with unyielding force. The ship's shields held for a brief moment before collapsing under the intense barrage. The beam punched through the hull, triggering a catastrophic chain reaction that obliterated the vessel in a massive explosion. For a moment, the battlefield was still. Without their flagship, the Zarksa fleet faltered, disoriented and vulnerable. They began to retreat. The Union fleet erupted into cheers, but aboard the HSS Resolute, there was no celebration, only a collective sense of relief. As the human fleet regrouped, Supreme Commander Athelcor's transmission came through once more. His expression was a mix of frustration and grudging respect. Captain Monroe, he said, his voice carefully controlled. Your actions were reckless and insubordinate, but they saved us. Elena met his gaze, her voice steady. We did what was necessary. That's what humanity offers. Athelcor gave a slow nod. Perhaps we underestimated you. As the transmission ended, Elena allowed herself a brief smile. The battle was over, but the war was far from finished. Humanity had proven its worth, but the challenges ahead would demand even more ingenuity and courage. The news of humanity's bold actions and the devastating power of their Omega launchers spread quickly throughout the Galactic Union. What had once been seen as a token gift had now become a symbol of human innovation, bravery, and defiance. But not everyone was pleased by the shift in perception. Supreme Commander Athelcor called for an emergency session of the Galactic Council aboard the Eternal Radiance. The council chamber was a grand space, its walls of polished crystal reflecting light in every direction, creating an atmosphere of both awe and tension. Representatives from the most powerful civilizations of the Galactic Union filled the room, their presence a testament to the vast reach of the Alliance. Elena Monroe had been summoned to attend as humanity's representative, an invitation that served both as a gesture of inclusion and a challenge to explain her actions. Elena entered, dressed in the sleek black uniform of the Earth Defense Fleet, every inch the figure of authority. Her arrival stirred murmurs and curious glances, as many of the delegates had never encountered a human before. She could feel their skepticism weighing on her, but she stood tall, unbowed. She was not here as a subordinate, she was here as an equal. Supreme Commander Athelcor initiated the session, his commanding voice echoing through the chamber. The battle in the Anran sector was a turning point in our fight against the Zarksa. However, it has raised important questions about humanity's place in this alliance. He began, his tone grave. The first to speak was Councillor Vra, the Sarek delegate who had first suggested gifting the Omega launcher to humanity. Her fur-covered face displayed both amusement and discomfort as she addressed Elena. Captain Monroe, your fleet's actions were unorthodox. While successful, they were also reckless. reckless. What would have happened if your Omega launchers had failed? If your modifications had failed catastrophically? Elena stepped forward, her voice calm and unwavering. With all due respect, Counselor, failure was never an option. Humanity has always thrived when pressed to the edge. We innovate, we adapt, and we overcome. The Omega launchers worked because we refused to let them fail. An insectoid delegate from the Exaltar Empire clicked its mandibles in irritation. And what of your disregard for orders? You engaged without authorization, putting countless lives at risk. Elena stood tall, her voice firm. We saw an opening in the battle and acted. Waiting for permission would have cost lives, yours and ours. A tense silence followed as the delegates absorbed her words. Finally, Supreme Commander Athelcor spoke again, his tone neutral but tinged with underlying respect. Your actions have demonstrated humanity's ingenuity, but they have also highlighted a critical flaw in our alliance, the tendency to underestimate those we deem insignificant. From the shadows of the chamber, a silent observer watched intently. Admiral Virish of the Zarxa, a former high-ranking officer now working as a strategic advisor for the Union, had been listening closely. To him, humanity's success was more than just a victory, it was a warning. The Zarxa had always relied on their technological supremacy, but if humans could turn a flawed weapon into a decisive force, what else could they achieve? Unnoticed, Virish slipped away from the chamber and sent a covert message to his former masters. The humans are more dangerous than we realized. They must be eliminated before they become a true threat. Back aboard the HSS Resolute, Elena received word of the Council's decision. The Union had voted to grant humanity greater autonomy within the Alliance, acknowledging their contribution and untapped potential. The victory felt incomplete. While the Zarxa were retreating for the time being, the war was far from finished. Dr. Aisha Patel joined Elena on the bridge, holding a datapad filled with fresh reports. The Omega launchers are fully operational on all human ships. The modifications are holding, but I'm still concerned about the long-term stability. These weapons weren't designed for this level of power, Aisha said, her tone cautious. Elena nodded in agreement. We'll push them to their limits. The Zarxa won't wait for us to catch our breath. Marcus Yates, her tactical officer, interrupted their conversation. Captain, we have an incoming transmission from the Eternal Radiance. It's Supreme Commander Athelcor. Elena sighed, then gave the order. Patch him through. A hologram of Athelcor appeared before them, his cold, unreadable expression staring back. Captain Monroe, he began. I trust you're ready for what's coming. The Zarxa are regrouping, and intelligence indicates they are targeting Earth. Elena's heart sank. The Zarxa had never directly attacked a homeworld before. They preferred to wage war far from civilian populations. A direct assault on Earth would be a disaster. They're coming because we've become a threat, Elena replied. But we'll be ready. Weeks later, the Zarxa fleet arrived in the Sol system, their ships eclipsing the stars as they closed in on Earth. The human fleet, reinforced by Union allies, formed a defensive line near the moon. On Earth's surface, the population prepared for the worst. The battle that followed was unlike any the galaxy had ever witnessed. The Zarxa unleashed their full might, their weapons cutting through Union ships with ruthless precision. But the Omega launchers proved to be humanity's equalizer. One by one, Zarxa dreadnoughts were destroyed, their massive forms reduced to rubble. From the HSS Resolute, Elena issued orders through the chaos. Focus fire on their flagship. If we take that down, the rest will follow. The Omega launcher charged for what felt like an eternity as the Zarxa flagship aimed at the Resolute. A direct hit would obliterate the human ship, but Elena stood her ground. Fire, she commanded. The beam struck the Zarxa flagship, breaching its core. The resulting explosion lit up the void, marking the battle's end. The remaining Zarxa ships, their morale shattered, began to flee. With the Zarxa defeated, the galaxy entered a fragile peace. Humanity's role in the conflict had reshaped the Galactic Union, forcing its members to recognize the power of adaptability and perseverance. Earth became a symbol of hope, its people celebrated as survivors and innovators. Elena stood on the bridge of the HSS Resolute, watching the sun rise over Earth through the viewport. Marcus approached her, a rare smile on his face. Looks like we've earned our place in the galaxy, he remarked. Elena nodded. We've shown what we can do. Now we push forward. As the first rays of sunlight bathed the bridge, Elena allowed herself a moment of quiet pride. Humanity had rewritten its story, not as the weakest link, but as a force to be reckoned with. And the galaxy would never forget.